Hello everyone and welcome to another episode here on the Comic Conversation YouTube channel. I'm one of your hosts, W. James, and if you're wondering why this looks like it's being shot on my desk, well, that's in fact because it is, coupled with the fact that I packed most of my stuff up, ready to go to school, and also coupled with the fact that I don't know where the footage went of the first time I recorded this. I'm recording it again. So without further ado, I do apologize for the DIY nature of this video, but I don't apologize for the fact that it is a Top Comics of 2017 video. Now granted, we've already rung in the new year. January is upon us. Doesn't mean we can't look back at all the comic books that made us laugh and cry and feel things back in 2017. So what I did was I created a bunch of categories, and in those categories we have winners for those categories. Obviously, it's both formal and non-formal all at the same time. While it's the official list for Comic Conversations, it's very much a bias in the fact that I chose them and I really enjoyed these books and I want to give them the credit that it's due. Without further ado, let's jump right into it. So the first book is the underrated book of 2017. This is a book that flew under everybody's radar, and it's a book that you should be absolutely reading because it's very, very good. There are two choices for this book that I was thinking of, but I ultimately went with Mystic U. Written by Lisa Quinty and drawn by Mike Norton, this book encompasses all the great things that Magic characters have to offer in the DC Universe. You have Zatanna and Dr. Cult and Felix Faust's kid. All of them really work well together, and it's pretty much Harry Potter meets the DC Universe. I mean, these sons and daughters of magic users go to college, experience college things, but all under a Hogwarts-esque university and all under the banner of like professors that are also part of the mystic part of the DC Universe. And it's really cool to see them in this new status quo and this new shift. This book comes out every other month, and I think you should really be reading it. The art's wonderful. The story is very interesting. They're only on book one. They've only released one issue, but so far that issue is really, really solid, and I appreciate everything they're doing with this book. So Mystic U gets under the radar book of the year, or book of 2017. Next up is the event book of 2017. This is a book that has had several tie-ins up to this point and also has a main series that's going through it as well. There are a lot of events that happen in a comic year, and most of them kind of fall flat in my opinion, but this is an event that I've been really stoked about, that I've been reading. It's Dark Knight's Metal, written by Scott Snyder and drawn by Greg Capullo. It's a love letter to the DC Universe. It's everything great about the DC Universe. It's highlighting parts of the DC Universe that you may not otherwise have gotten, and ultimately is just a great rock-on version of the DC Universe. It's literally the title Metal. You know, the first issue has them doing like the hook 'em horns, the rock-on sign. And that's just so cool to see a publisher give writers and artists an opportunity to really flex their muscles and really deal with the spirit of the DC Universe, which is really, really cool. Characters of Neil Gaiman's creation show up in it. There are characters that you haven't seen in a while that show up in it. There are characters that just don't get a whole lot of love generally that are in it. And I think all of that together morphs into what is an awesome book, and there are tie-ins to it. Some of them are a little miss, more of them are hit, so that's really cool. Gotham Resistance is very cool. The Dark Knight's Metal one-shots are also very cool. But the main Metal series is really, really interesting, and it's fun, and it's bombastic, exciting comicness. I think that's really, really dope. Event of the year, Dark Knight's Metal. Next up is Best Monthly Book. This is a book that comes out every month, and that goes to Aquaman. Aquaman, written by Dan Abnett and drawn by several artists, including but are not limited to Brad Walker, Stjepan Sejic, and Roberto Federici. These guys are creating a really, really dope Aquaman story that is submerged, pun intended, in a lot of nuance and a lot of espionage. Great character moments. This is also a year where we saw Aquaman go from twice monthly to once a month. That and several other DC books also did that, and it's an interesting take. It feels long between issues, but ultimately I think the story is really sound. I think the story is awesome. I picked it up in the middle of the summer when they did that monthly switch, and it was worth it. Stjepan Sejic started off with art. Roberto Federici has picked up off what Stjepan Sejic has left, and it's a beautiful book. It's worth the cover price alone if you just want to look at the pretty pictures, but the actual story that Dan Abnett's creating is really, really interesting, really, really fascinating, and really puts Aquaman in an interesting position as far as him in Atlantis and what all that means. It's also an interesting take on his kingliness and what makes him a king and should he be a king and all those kinds of themes. So Aquaman gets Best Monthly, but mostly because of the art. Best Bi-Weekly. This is a book that comes out every other week. Best Bi-Weekly Book. This is a book that comes out every other week. So twice a month, that book goes to Batman. Now you're probably wondering, oh, W, that's Batman. Like, you know, everyone reads Batman. Yeah, and you should be reading, everybody should be reading Batman. Batman is an awesome book full of nuance and character development and heart, you know, which is not a lot of times you see Batman give his heart to somebody. And seeing him and Catwoman play off each other has been a breath of fresh air, because Batman has been dark and gritty and grim, and bad things happen to him all of the time because he's Batman, right? But good things are happening to him, and they look like they're gonna stick. And it's not good thing happens to Batman, but only just to rip it away because we're mean, you know. I feel something when I read Batman, which is something that I can't say about all of the books I read day in and day out. I feel a lot for Batman in his position, and I'm happy for him. I want to support him, you know, which is not something you usually associate with Batman. Superman maybe, Wonder Woman maybe, but certainly not Batman. And I think that nature of happiness that we've entered in, this era of happiness that we've entered in Gotham, I think does the book wonders. Tom King really hits the nail on the head when it comes to character moments and character dynamics, and making issues that on paper may not thrive. I mean, the Batman Annual is a book that comes to mind. The Superman two-parter is a book that comes to mind. As books, The War and Jokes and Riddles, generally, all books that generally on paper shouldn't work, do. And that's a lot to do with the writing, and it's a lot to do with the artists involved. Clay Mann, Mitch Gerrits, David Finch, Joel Jones, all those guys are doing an excellent job bringing to life Batman. And I'm excited to read Batman. I'm excited to be happy for Batman. And I'm excited that it's the best bi-weekly book that I'm reading. Best Limited Series. This is a series that got a deadline to it. There's only X number of issues, and whether it's 8, 12, or so on, this book is capped. And that book is Batman White Knight. Batman White Knight asks the question, what if Joker was good? What if Joker was cured of the Jokerisms, and what does that world look like? And how do you get at Batman legally with the law and his vigilantism and all those kinds of things? Sean Gordon Murphy both writes and draws the book, and it's worth the art alone. The art is beautiful, but the story is really interesting, and it takes characters, first off, redesigns most of them, and also adds a layer to Gotham that we haven't seen, and a question that isn't often asked in a normal Batman book. So I appreciate that for its creativity and its newness, because I haven't seen something like this before. That's very, very cool. And I like it when I don't see things before, and when comic creators have ideas in their heads that they really get to flesh out in something like a limited series. So Batman White Knight gets Best Limited Series. Best Writer, Tom King. I'm a huge fan of Tom King's work. I loved Vision. I loved Mr. Miracle. I love Batman. I love the Batman Elmer Fudd one issue. I love Omega Men. I love a lot of things that Tom King writes. He really gets character. He really gets humanity. He understands how to bring these characters to life, but also applies something from his life into the books. Writing is a selfish nature, which is interesting. Because you take these ideas that you learn in life and you apply them to your writing. So you can only ever create something that you are, by and large, mirroring. And I think his work does that the best. When I read his books, whether it's Batman, Mr. Miracle, Omega Men, I get insight into Tom King, and I get insight to these characters, but I also get insight to Tom King and those characters. They become a little synonymous with each other, which is great. That's good writing. It's good writer. I'm not like, oh, that's obviously a Tom King book. I'm like, no, these are characters, but I also see where Tom King is coming from when he writes them. So Tom King gets Best Writer. Best Artist, Stjepan Šejić. It's pretty easy for me. I bought Aquaman monthly because of Stjepan Šejić. He was joining the book. I loved his art to begin with, and I hadn't seen much of him before, but I fell in love with his cover art. I fell in love with his interiors, and I was like, this is a book that I need to be getting more often because of Stjepan Šejić. He's no longer on that book, which is okay. There are all awesome artists that are replacing him, but for that short span, his art and his facial expressions, Dolphin, who's a character in the book, doesn't speak, but you understand what he's saying because he's so good at what he does. And so for that alone, he gets Best Artist of the Year for me. So I want to give colorists, inkers, and letters love as well. Now, I gotta say I'm not as familiar with these people, but I've read their stuff and I like their stuff, and so I want to give them credit where credit is due. There may be somebody better out there, but for me, these are my biases and my opinions of what I've read of them within the last year. Best colorist would go to Brad Anderson, who has colored things like Darkside War. Most of Jason Fabok's work is colored by Brad Anderson, and most of Geoff Johns' work is colored by Brad Anderson. Most recently, Doomsday Clock is something that he's been coloring as well, and the upcoming Swamp Thing issue that's coming out in December. His colors are great. They pop out. It really adds to the characters because his colors are great. I love color, and color is something that's so important to comic books, and I think he nails it every time he does it. Best inker goes to Jonathan Glapion. Now, I'm gonna be honest, I haven't read much of Jonathan Glapion's work except for Dark Knight's Metal. And I love Dark Knight's Metal. I think Dark Knight's Metal is an awesome book, and I think with Greg Capullo online work, Glapion really inking and really making those darks and white tones pop, I think it's dope, and I think he deserves the credit. So Jonathan Glapion, you did a great job with Dark Knight's Metal. Best letter goes to Clayton Cowles. And again, I haven't read a whole lot of Clayton Cowles' work, but I do read Mr. Miracle. And Mr. Miracle is one of my favorite series that I read month in and month out. And seeing that beginning and end, when you see that Mr. Miracle, and it's all red and yellow, and it's got the rounded letters around it, it makes it pop, and it's dope, and it makes you understand where these characters are coming from, whether it's the announcer or the narrator, Mr. Miracle himself, Big Barda, Oberon, all those guys, and seeing them and how they're lettered and where they emphasize certain words is very interesting, and it fits your brain. It clicks like a jigsaw puzzle. For that, Clayton Cowles, I commend you, and you get best letterer from me. Next is best individual issue. This is a book that has rung with me and stuck with me, and I think is a piece of content that I think everybody should read. That's Batman Annual number 2. I'm not a big fan of annuals. I quite frankly hate annuals. I think they don't do much for the intended story. I think historically they are just fluff pieces. I don't think a lot of times writers and artists really ever take advantage of those pages and take advantage of more pages and letters and space. But Batman Annual number 2 does. Written by Tom King, art by Lee Weeks. Batman and Catwoman's first interactions with each other and their very last. And it spans a relationship, and it spans a lifetime, and it spans a beautifully told story about love. And I think that's something we can all relate to. I think it's something that is certainly I related to. I just think it's a beautiful book. I think beauty is what describes the Batman Annual number 2 for me. Batman Annual number 2 is the single issue that stuck with me the most this year. Now to the grand finale, the best series of 2017 is Mr. Miracle. I mean, there's no book in my mind that even comes close to what Mr. Miracle emotionally does for me on a monthly basis. Tom King and Mitch Gerads, Clayton Cowles, all those guys really hone in on what it means to escape in 2017, 2018. The modern era is one of claustrophobia. The modern era is one of lack of understanding and empathy, and Mr. Miracle is experiencing that in his own way. He wakes up and the world doesn't make sense. And I think we can all kind of relate to that on some level or another, that we wake up and we see the news and we see the world and we don't understand why it is. And Mr. Miracle refers to that and tries to give you a bit of an answer to why things are and who things are and how those things connect into the human experience. But ultimately it's a book about escape, and how do we escape from the unescapable, which is emotions and feelings and ideas and our own brains. How do we escape that? And can we? And if the greatest of us, the greatest escape artist ever, can't do that, can we? And I think those themes and ideas I see in every page and every panel, and Mitch Gerads hits emotions so well, and they hit emotions so well. There's the ending of issue 4 is what is coming to my mind as far as like an emotional kicker that really stuck with me. That whole issue number 4 is great. Every issue continues to get better and better and better. And so I really love this book. I encourage you to pick it up because Mr. Miracle is the book of the year, and it will be the book of 2018. And it'll be the book until it's over and the last of its issues wraps up, because it's a book that continues to be just a joy. Anyway, that's all I got for you for this video. Please click the subscribe button if you haven't already. Please share this with your friends, like the video, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye.